So we're going to kick off officially for the video futures and career readiness and industry point of view. We've got three people from industry that are going to be coming up and sharing their story. And then we'll get on to some demos and kind of show some of the cool things that are going on. So at Adobe, we always do an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today. And I pay my respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here and online today. All right, I'm going to ask our guests to come up. I just want to start by getting each of you to briefly talk about your journey into this industry, what your first job was, and what would you wish you'd known earlier at that early stage of your life. And it could be something to the effect of, I didn't even know that where I am now was even a possibility, because I'm sure you've had a wiggly path. Where you are now is not where you started. So just a brief, we'll start with you, Paul.
Why? Can't we start with Simon?
No, you're right next to me.
So I'm Paul. I've been editing film for it must be like 20 years now. And I didn't want to be an editor. I didn't know what an editor was, but I was studying writing after high school. I actually wanted to become a children's author. And it was while I was studying writing that I discovered screenwriting, and dramatic structure is what we would call it. And just fell in love with the idea of like the order of a story and where you put things. And that really sort of hit something in my head. So I started writing screenplays, but nobody would film them. So I started filming them. And then after I filmed them, nobody would edit them. So I started editing them. And it was during the editing that I sort of went, hold on, this feels a lot like writing. But it's kind of even more exciting than writing because I'm using music and sound effects and pictures to bring a story to life. So I started pursuing that as an interest. And then when I got my first chance to edit a feature film, it was a documentary. And I hadn't really edited documentaries before, but it was while I was editing the documentary that I went, hold on, this is writing. Like I'm taking people's words and telling their story with those words. So I guess I started off with this want to be an author, and I think I sort of still ended up being an author. It's just I use pictures, sound, and music to tell those stories. In terms of I hope I've said enough.
Yeah. With I think you're right. Like an author, I mean, that's technically what you're doing.
Yeah.
As an editor, you're still authoring what becomes the final story at the end of the day.
And I guess to add on top of that, so I never actually studied to be an editor. I studied to be a writer, but I still feel like I use those tools that I studied in order to tell stories today. To the second part of your question, what do I wish I had have known back then? Or what would I sort of say to my past self as I am now? I feel like I should say this to myself every 5 years, is like, don't stress so much about knowing the tools and knowing the answers to everything. Like that comes with experience. The thing that I feel like I should always focus on and continue to focus on more is the human elements of our job. So connecting with audiences, connecting with the people you're collaborating with, and building up, relationships with the people you work with, and with the audience. That human element, I feel like, is the thing that we should always pay more attention to than just the tools or just the business side of things. That's something I wish I could remind myself every day, to be honest. But that's my short answer.
All right, Tamara.
Hello, I'm Tamara, or you can call me Tam. I work in more of an administration side of TV. So I have done that for about 20 years, and my role is called Production Supervisor of Post. So I'm in charge of multi-million-dollar budgets, 150 plus crew at any one time, recruitment, scheduling, and all the sort of HR stuff that goes with it. So when I first started out, not all success stories start well. I failed high school. And I failed maths, which was not great. I didn't get into uni, so I had to go to business college. So I did that for a year and I sort of gelled a little bit better being out of a school environment in a more adult learning environment. And I ended up at the end of the college, got a work placement at Channel 7. And I ended up being a PA to the EA, which is an executive assistant, to the Director of News and Current Affairs, Peter Meek. So probably the younger people in the room won't know who that is, but he was in the news quite a bit in the early 2000s. And so I worked for him. I learnt very quickly how to make a very good cup of tea. And it was a really exciting time working in the newsroom, working in current affairs when Sunday night was sort of just about to start. Worked in a whole variety of through a whole variety of sort of crazy times in the 2000s. And then I sort of wove my way on productions, in and out on different productions, Sydney Weekender, The Great Outdoors, and then moved into the more sort of unscripted reality space. So worked on the first series of MasterChef, The Biggest Loser, Australian Idol. We worked together on Australian Idol more years ago, or it was black and white days back then. Yeah, exactly. So they hadn't even launched HD. So we've worked together for many years. And yeah, then I ended up sort of where I am now in this kind of role maybe 10 years ago. So I've been doing this kind of role for about 10 years. And what I wish I had have known back then is you don't always have to have the answers. You don't always have to say yes to everything. And I wish I had have known to have better boundaries with work-life balance. That's sort of where I'm at in my life now, is that that's really important. So if you can take away anything from my experience, it's have some good boundaries in place.
Yeah, that's one of the topics that we're going to go into after everyone's done their intros, because that's probably one thing that our generation, and we're all about the same age, you can see we've been working 20-something years, that this generation are very conscious of that not going too far. So we will bring that topic up. Simon, please, an introduction of where you began and...
I began by saying yes to a lot of things and then no to a lot of things later.
What was your first job?
First job was cutting educational videos on VHS in Melbourne when I came over from New Zealand. And some of the topics are pretty fun. Things like from cow to cone, the story of ice cream. And I just remember getting the wrong voices under the wrong animations and all sorts of fun things. And I was learning Avid and kind of going, and an editor next door came in and just looked at me and went, having a bit of trouble. So that was fun. Going back a bit further, I was born in Perth and raised in New Zealand, and I went to study law and just kept falling asleep because I need mission kind of based stuff. I need time kind of imposed upon me, and I like a good deadline. So then I went to fine arts school, Arden School of Fine Arts, and did a fine arts degree and art theory as well. And I just thought editing had all of those fine arts in it that I was doing in first year. It's a bit sculptural, it's a bit painterly, you know, designs there as well. And so kind of learned about concepts. Curiosity played a huge part in that as well. And ideas, writing, storytelling, I guess, fundamental part of it. And then from there, just sort of bounced through, I guess, hustling and just trying to get work for money. And because I wanted to travel all the time, I just wanted experiences, meeting people and other cultures. I think for me, that's been a big thing, just bringing in my experiences and who I am into an edit suite, in collaborating with people, and really enjoying that process of being with people and telling shared stories and getting into, I don't know, unscripted work has been really fun, really fulfilling, because it is kind of like sometimes solving a puzzle or going down a rabbit hole, or I don't know, an Egyptian kind of pyramid and looking for clues on the walls. Actually, they're probably the first memes when they hieroglyphics, come to think of it.
So what's one of the things that
I wish I knew?
you could go back in time and meet yourself back then? You
Don't do law. Take a year out or something. What else? Kind of just to get to know myself better, I think.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, really good. All right. Well, I do have specific questions for each of you now. So I'll stick with you, Simon. We'll come back the other way. Did you ever imagine winning a globally recognized Emmy award? Because that's pretty impressive. This is an Emmy award-winning editor.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about that process. What was it like being nominated? What was it like working for? It was a US production that you were cutting for?
I was cutting here in Australia.
Sure. Yeah, so tell us a bit about that. Just a little bit about what that was like, and then when you found out and going there.
It was just a huge surprise, honestly, because I'd cut the Australian series, Love on the Spectrum. And then,
you're familiar with Love on the Spectrum, the series?
Yeah, and then
brilliant show. Yeah,
kind of just kept cutting and doing the same thing really with the US one in the same place, and never really honestly occurred to me that it could be up for an Emmy award. And then someone rang when I was walking the dog in the morning, and I was like, "What? Sorry." Okay, that's a really pleasant surprise. And one of the other editors, I think, was not around, or we couldn't get hold of him to tell him he was swimming in a pool for 3 hours, and it's like, we just all kind of went bonkers about it. It was great. And then going over there, I was seated at the back after I got off the plane. I mean, I just kind of like went straight to the Emmys because I was editing. Got seated at the back and just thought, okay, there's no chance of winning this thing. Right at the back. So I just took my shoes off and kind of started to have a nap. And then this camera came swooping down, and the other editors started running, and I'm kind of chasing them, putting my shoes on just out of frame. And Rachel, one of the other editors, was so excited that she went up onto the wrong stage. So we all kind of ended up there. It was quite great. It's very, very kind of modest of us, I think, being Australians, to have a bit of a shambles time. But yeah, it was awesome. And getting to that point, I mean, that series, the US one, was actually kind of the 5th series that I'd worked on with similar content. So it was a well-refined, well-percolated, I guess you could say, because it did another series, Employable Me, then the Australian version of Love on the Spectrum. Because in Employable Me, there were 2 contributors having a date, and that was just an eye-opening moment, and that's what set off the journey of Love on the Spectrum. So yeah, I mean, I've done other things since. Really enjoy sport docos. It's kind of great getting inside an elite mindset, learning things. So I kind of, jump around unscripted a bit like Paul, and I like the thesis of things and just constantly exploring and learning and growing. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's awesome that you took your shoes off and then realised you had to. Oh my God, I'm going up, and it's scramble to put your shoes on. That's quintessentially humble, I think. Yeah. All right, Tam. So you've worked on multi-million-dollar productions, so it's kind of ironic that you failed maths. Yeah.
Really failed it.
So working at that scale, do you have an opinion on the way that Australians and New Zealanders kind of approach production that might be a bit different to other regions?
I think we're probably some of the hardest working crew in the world. We certainly have the highest burnout rate in Australia. in comparison to the rest of the world. I think it's around 61% in Australia and about 48% across the rest of the world. So I think we're extremely hardworking. We did a little thing back in the sort of mid 2000, would have been 2008 or 9. We redeveloped MasterChef. So the UK and US were doing it, and they were doing rounds, heats, semi-finals, finals, grand finals, and it wasn't quite working in Australia. So we structured the whole thing, and as if you've seen MasterChef, it's sort of more of a top 100, top 50, top 25, or top 24, and then top 12 sort of thing. So we're very good at looking at formats and redeveloping them for our own territory, and really know what works for the people that are watching it. So there's some amazingly creative people coming out of Australia and New Zealand. I think it's really important to note because, yeah, we've had, I mean, and MasterChef's not the only example, but it's just one that will probably resonate with people here because they've seen it. Yep. Yeah, I think it's, we're a good bunch.
Yeah, we are globally recognised as we think differently. I think it's part of our embedded culture. We try to shoot as high as we think we need to. We go, well, you know, we're this little country that nobody knows us, and we overachieve, and we don't realise how much we overachieve because we've got the tall poppy syndrome. So we don't pat ourselves on the back enough, and we work extra hard, and that kind of, we'll get into this burnout kind of concept a little bit. So it's good, but it comes at a cost sometimes. Paul, so you've fairly recently come back to Australia, but for a period there, you were living and working in New York City, and you came back during the sort of late stages of COVID or mid-COVID times. And so you've continued those relationships by living in Australia, but then working with productions that are based in the US. What did you find with that workflow that meant actually I could live in Australia and still collaboratively work like that? I think there's a fairly new way of being able to work that has now become, I think, quite ubiquitous. It's not super uncommon to do that. So could you elaborate a bit on that?
I haven't worked in the same room as the people that I'm working with for 5 years. And some of those people are in Sydney.
Because you're from Melbourne. He's from Melbourne.
I'm in Melbourne. So, but like, I mean, sometimes even people in Melbourne. But I mean, what COVID forced us to do is really think about the technology that was sort of requiring us to sort of go and be in the same room together, and can we actually sort of break that out? So there was a lot of innovation. One of the first films I cut after COVID was a film called In Vitro that actually had Sydney directors. I was in Melbourne, and we cut that using software called Evercast, which is real-time video feed, basically. And honestly, it felt like we were in the same room together. Every morning we would jump on, I would be sharing my timeline and my picture with the directors who were both in Sydney, but in their own spaces as well. And I'll never forget the day deep into the production that one of the directors got COVID. And my first thought was, geez, I hope I didn't catch it off him. I had to take a moment to go, how is that even possible? But it just felt like we're in the same room together. But I guess the underlying part of your point, and it probably coincidentally comes back to what I was saying earlier, is with only a few exceptions, everything I've worked on in this new sort of remote workflow, none of those relationships, or very few of those relationships, were formed in that same environment. So very few of those relationships were formed over a Zoom call. It's usually always meeting somebody in person and having like a genuine, authentic connection that would then lead to that person saying, hey, why don't we work together? And I think that's really key in this environment now where you can just stay in your bedroom and work there all day, is that means you have to work extra hard to work on those relationships. You know, I still work with people in the US that, you know, I used to see all the time. But it's harder to make those connections now that I'm not in the US. And certainly whenever the opportunity arrives for me to come here to Sydney and meet some people in person, or occasionally go to the US and meet people in person, I find that is really important, because I know that that's planting a seed for a relationship that will come later on. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's good. So yeah, there are opportunities that didn't exist when we started, where the kind of work that you get to do now, so social media didn't exist when we were your age. And so that's like a whole field of content that's kind of just exploded opportunities, and learning the craft, and, you know, building in the muscle memory of what the functions are that you need to do 1,000 times a week.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think that's amazing that somebody on the other side of the world could work on something, but that means you have to work, as I said, extra hard at building those relationships, because somebody's not going to wake up one day and go, I wonder if that guy in Australia would be good at cutting this film. You have to work to get to that point beforehand. The opportunity is there, but you have to plant that seed in order for that to happen.
Right. So, yeah, and the networking, as well as being able to do that work remotely, the technology exists. It's not going to go backwards. So, you know, the world is your oyster, really, but you've got to put the effort in to do the networking. And I think that's a theme that we've kind of already been touching on there, about the networking being an important thing. So speaking of networking, you guys, all of you, are part of the Australian Screen Editors Guild. So get that QR code. It'll take you to the Screen Editors Guild site. Students get to have a free membership. I think is there a discount for staff, for teachers, or don't remember? No, there's no. Okay, you got to pay full rate. So
We've got an associate membership for anyone that's in the community that might not be a fully fledged editor or have the fully fledged credits that we.
And that's how I started out, as an associate. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, even though you're students, this is a great resource to start being connected to the professional community, at least within Australia. This group does have international connections with a global group called Tempo, and Paul is actually going to be speaking at the next Tempo event, which is
at 3:30
what is it,
in the
3:30 in our morning?
Yeah.
Because he's presenting the kind of unique work and perspective he has had to Europe and America. So the time zone works well for them, but we are considered very, very good at what we do. We think differently, and people are very interested in the way that we approach creative problem solving. So, all right, just on this, Tam, you have a very special role at the Guild. Could you just give us a quick one-liner of what your role is there and what your goal is?
I'm a business manager, so I look after all our sponsors, so bringing our sponsors on board. Adobe is one of them, and looking after that relationship throughout the course of the year, and also looking after bringing on new members and just managing the day-to-day operations.
Cool. And Simon, you also sit on the committee. What does that mean? You're sitting on the committee. What does that mean for you?
It's a good question.
What's the kind of thing, what's the responsibility you have by being part of the committee? And you're in the New South Wales
well, I guess
committee.
To represent members and their best interests. What the Guild really provides is community and, you know, the sense of connecting you with people, other editors, some very experienced editors through mentorships. So kind of cater to everyone as well, like very diverse spread. We've got state bodies across Australia. So on the executive level, there's a meeting once a month and we bring in to that meeting updates of what we've been doing in different groups. So we have quite a few groups, like a dozen, that focus on different things for members. And we put out content, we do webinars, hold workshops, events.
Drinks.
Yeah, socials. We do quite a lot of that. We have diversity inclusion group, health and wellness, et cetera. Heaps of things are going on. And it's a great way to link yourself from education into industry, definitely. And I wish I knew about it when I came back to Australia, because getting a mentorship straight off the bat would have been fantastic. Yeah, it's a really good hub.
Yeah.
To visit.
Yep. I think if you got one thing that you put your energy into and use that to be a spider web of all of the different opportunities and networking opportunities that exist, this is the one spot I think you should put your effort in. So Paul, you're on the Victorian committee, but you're also not just doing similar things to what Scott is doing there. Simon, sorry. You're also part of some subcommittees.
Yeah, just so I'm on the Vic committee, but I'm also on it's sort of an emerging committee that's just in its infancy, which is the technology group. And I don't know if you're aware, but the technology in editing is suddenly changing so fast. Maybe you'd know something about that. But with the emergence of AI, I'm actually giving a talk on AI. I'm giving a few talks on AI in the next few months, and I have to revise my notes every month because it's changing so fast. So we're putting together this group that is making recommendations and providing statements on this emerging technology as well.
All right, so Tam was able to put together this list of Facebook groups and LinkedIn sort of tips around, just move out the way there, around those that are looking for work. So the Facebook, even though that's where the old fuddy-duddies like us exist, the groups, the communities that are part of Facebook are unique and quite different to any other platform. I know that there's probably some WhatsApp groups that exist, and Instagram isn't quite the right platform for this either. And LinkedIn is kind of a work-focused communities kind of space, whereas Facebook can be personal, just hanging out, but there's a lot of pro stuff there too. So take a photo of that screen. Again, this is recorded, so you'll all get a copy of the recording. All those are listed there are Australian-specific groups, but there are global groups throughout Facebook, and there's just really good resources there to ask questions, to learn something new, to get great tips on things, to troubleshoot sometimes as well if you've got issues. Really, really good. So with LinkedIn, you need to have and maintain a profile. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile and you don't have any information about what you're doing and you're not linking to people through LinkedIn, then when someone looks at you to maybe have a job application, they will look at LinkedIn and go, who do you know that I trust, that then you're part of this inner circle of sort of connecting. So when you go out and you be social, think about, oh, are you on LinkedIn? I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So if you meet people at the drinks events or at any of the events that you go to and you're having a good conversation, you have to be brave. It will pay dividends. Ask, are you on LinkedIn? They say yes, and you say, I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. And that's how you start building a digital network that has a bigger impact. Any other notes on that? Paul's got a grimaced face.
No, I'm thinking.
You're thinking.
It's my thinking face.
It's your thinking face.
Yeah.
As somebody that recruits people in all types of roles, I would say having that LinkedIn profile is the most important. I would advertise on all the Facebook groups if I was looking to fill roles. You guys would have seen me spam constantly in there. So all the job opportunities will go in there. Most of the entry-level jobs will go into that entry-level, Shootang entry-level. But the LinkedIn profile, I'll quite often just type in edit assistant or transcriber or, assembly editor, and then a whole plethora of names will come up and I'll just go, oh, yep, I think I know that person, or, oh, that person's done this course. Great, I'll check in. So it's definitely for recruiters like myself, it's definitely important to have that.
Yep. All right, so now we get to discuss your point of view on certain things. So mindset, we're going to get into this this work-life balance second, but first, we talked about this before we put this thing together. And the one thing that we kept bringing up was this concept of being able to have a sense of direction that you want to go in. And even though you're not going to start there, it's good to voice that I really want to get into this kind of work, and that concept could change. So having a sense of planting seeds with people that might at the right time remember, oh, I know that they want to do more documentary work. They're just doing low-end social media stuff, but they have a passion for this. I'll give them a go. Is that the kind of thing that you've seen out there in the working world as well, Tam?
Yeah, for sure. So when I'm recruiting people at that interview sort of, or even phone call stage, I'll say, you know, I'm looking for an edit assistant. Are you interested? And they'll say, yeah, I am. You know, I it's not something I want to do forever, but maybe I want to be a director or I want to be a writer. It doesn't mean they're not going to get the job that I'm offering. It's just, it keeps in the back of my mind, oh, okay, we're looking for a writer now. Oh, that person's not quite right, or we don't have a budget for a writer, but I could say, hey, there's an opportunity here for you to, you know, sit with someone who is a writer. Do you want to have a go?
Yeah, there's an old phrase, if you don't ask, you don't get. It's true in life, 100%. So you put yourself out there, have a sense. I want to go, this is where I want to be. And it could change midway, which I think Paul explained. He wanted to be a writer, and then it evolved. It turned into something else. So as you gain experience, you will change. So you might need to plant new seeds and say, well, actually, I'm more interested in this stuff now. So having a voice, it does make a big difference. And I understand that can be scary to do. It will pay dividends in the end. All right, work-life balance. So Simon and Tam both do extra bits of work outside of their typical work to do with this sort of health stuff. Do you want to just, Simon, you want to give us an understanding of the type of stuff that you do that's got to do with this work-life balance and health?
I guess it's about sort of,
what is it exactly that you do as well? Like,
inside the Guild, I look after the health and wellness group.
Yeah.
I've also done a first stage Australian mental health course. And inside the ASC, it's really about mental and physical health, and sort of providing in there a bit of scaffolding, I guess, for editors and people in post-production on how they can go about, you know, functioning in this career in a healthy way. So the last event that the group organised was with a couple of psychologists, and we went through what you can do to survive the process of doing a film or a TV series. And that's really insightful, and I highly recommend people look at that. Because we were talking about burnout before, and that is a real thing. And I think one of the biggest takeaways from that for me was to really get in place your self-care in between your contracts before you get into something, and have that there for yourself so you can, you know, fall back on it when you need to, because when we get to the pointy end of projects, it can be pretty intense. So you've got to look after yourself. So yeah, that group was set up by myself and someone else who has also been through some physical challenges. I had heart surgery in February, so it was pretty fun. And she, Amelia, she needs to do quite a lot of work every day just to look after her back. And she is a really high-profile drama editor, and she's now doing 6 days a week because she can't keep up with the workload every day, so she spreads it out, and she moves between Sydney and Melbourne, so she's got a lot going on. Yeah, so the group's been really good. We've had more people join to help us out, and hope to get more content out soon. Yeah, and mental health first aid has been really great. I think it all stemmed from that for me, and Tam is now teaching it.
So I'm a mental health first aid instructor or a teacher. So I'm able to train up students or any adult in mental health first aid. So it's very close to home for me, unrelated to the TV world. My dad and my brother are both war veterans. So we've had a lot of mental ill health in our family, and I've had to look after them at certain times throughout their life. But in my role, in that recruiting role, and sort of being the mother hen for so many years, looking after so many of our freelancers, I found myself taking on a lot of people's problems. So, you know, I'd find out someone was getting divorced. We had someone who lost a child, a teenager, and we had, you know, all this stuff would happen, and it would sort of feel like it was piling up on me. So I wanted to do something for myself, but also for the community. So I went and retrained, and so I've been rolling out some courses for our TV community at heavily reduced prices, just so there's a number of us in the community that can support one another. So got 15 new TV and film mental health first aiders out in the wild at the moment, which is nice.
Yeah. When I first started talking to these guys about being panelists and they brought up this aspect of what they do, I was fascinated by it. And I think it's new for the industry, but it's very important to sort of have that top of mind and be well armed on not just, you know, this other concept of, you need to stretch yourself a bit in order to put yourself into future opportunities, but also have a sense of the kind of boundaries that you need to stay healthy mentally and physically, because you're sitting down for many, many hours. Before you know it, sometimes you've sat down in the same spot for 10 hours straight. That's not good. It's not good for your back. It's not good for your neck. It's not good for your eyes. You had an issue, was it your leg?
You're talking to me?
Oh, sorry, Tam, you were telling me about...
I sat down for so long during COVID that I got a blood clot in my leg. It was 12 centimetres. It took about 12 hours. That's how long I was sitting down for, 12 hours to develop, and it took 6 months to get rid of it. And I nearly died. So I'm very, passionate about people looking after their brain, but also their bodies while they're working. Go for a walk, have a break. They're really important. They're not there. You know, it's not a joke that there's a law that says, you know, after a certain number of hours, you need to have a break.
So I'd like to ask you, Paul, about your curious hours, given that you are doing this event in a couple of nights' time, but also working with the US. How do you kind of physically and mentally kind of keep yourself balanced as best you can, given the sort of sometimes strange hours that you're working?
Yeah, well, the 2:30 in the morning, that's an exception. I wouldn't do that usually. When I work with the East Coast in the US, you know, that's some 5 a.m. meetings and things like that. Sometimes that's just the way it has to be. But I was very lucky. Actually, I'll mention something that I was introduced to when I was living in the US that I don't think is sort of filtered down here. Is there was a podcast started about 10 years ago called Fitness in Post, which was a play on the word fix it in post. And it was sort of about looking after yourself during editing. And that has rebranded a couple of times. And now it's called the Zach Arnold Academy podcast, run by a former editor, Zach Arnold. And that sort of showed up in my life at just the right time. I was in my 30s and I just started to feel like my energy levels were very low. The creativity wasn't coming as easily as it used to. And I quickly realized it's because of my lifestyle. So started to focus on, you don't have to sit for 10 hours a day. In fact, I have what's called a Pomodoro timer on my computer that every 45 minutes locked out of my computer. So I go for a walk around the block, and kind of like how the best ideas come to you in the shower, best ideas come to me during that walk every 45 minutes, just for 7 minutes or something like that, just to get the blood pumping again. The difference in your sort of mental state after a day of doing that is huge compared to sitting down for 10 hours, blood clots aside. Just sort of looking after yourself. I got a standing desk as well. So I alternate sitting and standing throughout the day. And I have no doubt that when I get up at 2:30 a.m. Sunday morning, I'm going to go for a jog before I, sit down and talk for 90 minutes. So just really important to remember that as much as this is a mental craft, it's important to look after the physical self as well.
Thank you. All right. So the last thing here with the mindset is just we call it get in the muck. It's like, don't be afraid to stretch yourself with what you think you're maybe a bit scared of, but networking, I think is kind of the main thing. And if you have access to some sort of a workplace, go in. It does make a difference when you bump into people. Like I'd come up from Melbourne, not as often as I probably should. I've got a little 2-year-old, so that makes my travel life a little bit more restricted than usual. And yeah, bumping into my colleagues in the office, it's really nice to sort of have that exchange. So just because you can, from technology, work from home all the time, get out there and just run into people, go to spaces, not just networking, just if you've got access to an office, use it every now and then. It's really, really good for your mental health. And then another thing about just keeping busy. So if you're sitting there waiting on a render, watch tutorials, learn some new, what's new? What's the latest tips and tricks and different features and functions? Just stay mentally active because there's always things coming up. It's changing very quickly. So on that topic, we'll flip over to AI. Has anyone heard of AI?
What does it stand for again?
No, doesn't start with I. So artificial intelligence, there's so many different variations of what constitutes that AI brand. Some of them are LLMs, and that's a conversational kind of a thing, and there's a space for that. Some of them are just machine learning things, like functions that just get you to the end game a little quicker. So as Paul mentioned already, he's got quite a lot of experience with this particular field. So I think we'll just get your point of view just to keep time ticking along here. What are your thoughts and experiences so far, and what do you think the future looks like, given AI is now, the genie's out of the bottle, it ain't going backwards? Should we be scared? Should we embrace it? What's your position on it?
Everybody asks me this. I never know where to start. I mean, my love of editing has always been about where art meets technology. So I'm a kid in a candy store at the moment with every new thing that comes out with artificial intelligence. I spend a little bit of every day trying to figure out what is a new tool that I can test out and see how that will change my workflows. And truthfully, my documentary editing workflow in the last 3 years has changed so much. To think that I would have to go back to editing documentaries the way I was 10 years ago, actually, I think I would throw a fit and walk out if somebody required that. Do you want me to get specific or?
Well, yeah. So you and I have had lots of conversations.
Yes.
Over a long time. We've known each other quite a long time. So for you, what has been the most powerful thing that you currently use that didn't exist before AI?
Okay. So the answer to that is quite boring, and it's just text-based editing. As I mentioned earlier, I wanted to be a writer when I started doing this. So the idea that I could edit a scene using words rather than clips on a timeline, I was in heaven with that. One of the first scenes I ever edited with text-based editing, and that's the idea that AI does a transcript and then you're moving words around rather than moving clips around. I did a documentary in 2022, which was a 20-minute scene of non-professionals filming themselves just having a chat. And there was no point to the scene. It was just two friends having a chat. And I just thought there was a time when I would look at that and it would just be so overwhelming. I wouldn't even know where to start with that scene. But the fact that I had the whole thing written as a script, for the first time I was sort of it's interesting. They're talking about that down there. And they're also, so what if I took that and just moved that? And like, I suddenly started to feel like I had a bird's eye view that I never had before. So I'll talk about text-based editing till the cows come home. But even more recently, Adobe has released intelligent search, which is the idea that AI is just scanning my footage and identifying what's in the frame. So, you know, I can say, you know, show me everything with tall buildings in it. And it doesn't matter whether I have tagged that as tall buildings. The AI has actually gone, here's all the shots with tall buildings. So the fact that I can actually search based on thoughts rather than on metadata or something. And you know, that's something that's available in Premiere right now. But I'll round out on this one. I even just like chatting with LLMs about stuff I'm working on as well. And I know that's a robot. And I know that that's a robot that is statistically trying to tell me what is most likely based on the data it's been trained on. And there's also like a little thing in there where they've also told it and also compliment this guy because he's paying for this. So every idea I suggest to it, it's like, oh, this is amazing. You must be a professional. This is amazing what you've just got. So the trick is when I'm pitching stuff to LLMs and asking it for ideas and suggestions. What do you think about this? What do you I never tell it I did it. I say, somebody's given me this script of this scene. Can you provide some feedback on that? And then you find it's a little less complimentary and I'm less of a genius, but I feel like I'm getting just interesting thoughts to sort of process there. So I like chatting with LLMs as well.
All right. Well, for the interest of time, I do have some slides here and I might ask you guys to migrate. Thank you for sharing your point of view and your stories. So we tried to limit things to sort of 3 themes. So I'm going to kind of burn through these and then I'll go through some demos. So high value work ready skills. There's media management and it matters. It's boring, but it really matters. And we'll get some slides on that in a second. Rinse and repeat of like preparing content as well. It's the boring stuff, but it's really the most important stuff to get your head around. And I'll show some examples of that too. And then this long form collaboration, and where Premiere Pro has been doing this for some time now. I can see a few nods up the back there. Afters have adopted the technology called Productions in their curriculum and they're having a great time, which is good. And all of these guys have got some sense of what it's like and some have been working in it for quite some time. So that's kind of a thing to know. It's fairly new, so it's good to know about it because it's becoming the new norm. All right, so media management matters. File path hygiene, it matters. Have you ever downloaded something or moved something to the desktop or the downloads bin and then imported that and then cut it? And then you might have to share that work and then someone gets it and goes, where are these files? Oh, it's on the drive. I gave you on the drive. It's not on the drive. Oh God, where is it? So there are ways to use search terms in Premiere to go and find where you may have been quick and gone, oh crap, I've got a bunch of files that are on the desktop or somewhere they shouldn't be. Go and identify them, go move them, and then reconnect them before you hand over. So over time, you'll get much better at it, but this kind of stuff, it makes a huge difference, especially when you've got big deadlines on shows. And this happens at the professional level too. So it's not just people that are new, it happens all the time. So fixing that poor hygiene of imports, there's ways to do that. I won't go into it, but there's ways, you can look it up. And you want to, in the classroom, feel this pain, make it part of what's happening in the classroom, because you don't want them to never have that experience and then have to figure it out in the work environment, because that's high stress. Put some of that muscle memory in the classroom. Proxies. So proxies are lighter weight files because you've got big files that are probably too heavy for the computer to play back properly, or the resolution is just too high and you just can't have a drive that has all that media on it. So there's a concept of working with a proxy file. File names make a difference in the world of Premiere. So The naming convention, you can see on this bottom one, it is the same name, just a different file extension name. So how do you know which one's the real one? Which one's the camera file and which one's the proxy? You don't know. So you need to know the difference, because that can get you into a lot of trouble later on, especially if you hand over to someone else in a different process. So creating proxies in Premiere, if you make them in Premiere, we solve that problem. We solve that problem for you by adding a suffix, which is an extension on the name of the original file, underscore, and the word proxy. And Premiere understands that that means it is a proxy for that original file name. There are a lot of conventions where proxies are made in some other software, and without that convention, that's a manual step that needs to be added in. We do that for you. So just get your head around that. And then these guys highlighted as well the concept of codecs and wrappers. And it will break your brain, but it does make a difference if you don't understand. So we, by default, will create proxies using ProRes. And there's a reason why. You can do H.264, smaller files, but it comes at a cost. So what does that kind of look like? So codec is a portmanteau. So it's one word made of two words. Co for compression and dec for decompression. So a codec is what it is that's made that file be able to show you and give you hearing of what it is that's going on. So it's the data rate of what's going on inside there. The wrapper is that file extension, file type. So what that looks like, the wrappers are .mxf, which means media exchange format, usually comes off cameras. It is also a delivery format for broadcast. They will want MXF files. MP4s, very common. Phones shoot it, mirrorless cameras shoot it, and even professional cameras will shoot in MP4 as well. That could have some variation of different types of compression inside it, but they generally are quite compressed. There's variations, but that stands for MPEG-4, which is the group that made it. MOV, QuickTime movie files, that's a wrapper, and you can have a bunch of different stuff that sits inside of that too. Then you've got these RAW files. Red cameras have R3D files. RE cameras, very common in feature work, have the .ARRI. They have another one. HDE is another one that they use. And then B-RAW is another one that's quite common now, and it's an Australian company, Blackmagic, who make those cameras. So these are the most common kinds of things that you'll come across. And what that looks like, just to give you a sense of it, long-op is kind of where things get hairy. It's a group of pictures, which is what the GOP means. It's highly compressed, and it's HEVC and H.264 that will do it. It's a small file, but it's actually quite a lot of processing work to get it to play and have it stop on frames so you can do frame accurate editing. It's not a great codec for editing. Interframe is what it's called, where each frame has its own compression, bigger file size, but there's less decompressing in order to play it back. So they're the mezzanine files that everybody would like to cut with, and that's ProRes. ProRes is one of them. And then you've got the raw stuff. It has to do this thing called debayering. It's quite process heavy. It's extremely high data rates. So that's usually not something that you would typically cut without proxies. You can in certain circumstances, but generally not. So proxies is a key thing. Okay, and then there's a list here. You'll all get the recording, so you can get access to that. But there's just a bit of a list of what kind of formats, what wrappers might hold what codecs. And there's a lot. So even though it's boring, that's stuff good to know. These are the main flavors that are in the professional world: ProRes, XD-Cam, Sony, ABC Intra, Panasonic, and then DNX. There's HD and HR from Avid. They're very popular working formats to work with. Cool. Now, this is the rinse and repeat stuff. So this is the muscle memory. This is the boring stuff that is super important to learn. Learn your keyboard shortcuts. If you keep doing your thing over and over and you don't have a keyboard shortcut and you click mousing, you're wasting a lot of time, and you're going to do things thousands of times. Learn the keyboard shortcuts or create one. Metadata, we kind of touched on that. The concept of metadata is when you wrap your head around where it works, there's a space where I'm using this as an example where you've got a lot of camera button on and offs for a multicam shoot. You select all that media, and in the metadata, you tell it the camera label is all these shots are camera A, all these shots are camera B. Then when you go over to create a multi-camera source sequence, you can use the camera label to assign all those shots will land on video track 1. All those shots will land on video track 2. And you can do the same thing with the audio if you've got separate audio. That knowledge of metadata will make this stuff way faster and more organized. So it's something to just learn about it. You won't master it for a while, but it's something to put on the radar. And then, yeah, so doing the asset prep for multicam, it's not just multicam. So if you've got multiple audio files, you need to do sync sound. It's the same process in Premiere. It's the right way to do it. There's multiple ways to do it in Premiere, but the best practice is to create multi-camera source sequence. The naming doesn't necessarily make sense, but what it allows you to do is we call it a container. You have video and audio contained as one clip that you cut, and then you flatten it at the end, and then it brings back all the separate pieces that are inside that. So get your head around that one. It'll save you a lot of time and a lot of headaches. This is text-based editing. So this is a bit of AI engine to learn how to get that spoken speech into a transcripted text format, and then searching with the transcript panel in Premiere allows you to find keywords. It allows you to isolate speakers because it can identify different speakers as well. And there's different use cases where knowing what it can do can just clean things up a lot quicker to get started. And a good example of this is an interview that is running that's 15 minutes there. So it's like probably 18 minutes long. And then by using a particular filter on the speaker, so it could be the interviewer, just get rid of the interviewer. All the bits where the interviewer is talking, pull that all out. You can see the gaps that get cut out. And then there's a way to do that so it extracts those and condenses it down. So all the gaps get closed as well. So there's a few different techniques that you can learn to use that will help you just get started, just prepare way faster. And then the collaboration piece. So this is productions. It's a multi-project environment. So you have multiple projects that all talk to each other under the umbrella of a production. And that means you can have multiple editors in there working on their own project. So you can start to collaborate and split off big loads of work. And TV work, that's where this is, like, you need to know how this stuff works, because you can't do TV series, especially with unscripted. It's just not possible to do it in a single project. You have to understand how this stuff works. And when Paul first started doing this, you were telling me you were blown away by how little you needed to learn to make it work. Here we go.
Yeah, Adobe had like a PDF document. It was like a couple of pages, and I read it on a flight and started using it the moment I got off the flight. It's very easy to use and start coordinating between. And I just wanted to add, I don't think it's just like collaborative groups that need to use this. I think I'm working on a feature right now where I'm the only editor, but I use this for all of my backup projects and everything, so that all of my individual projects are talking to each other, and it keeps my project size down as well.
Yeah. So just to give you a sense of what this sort of structure is, the background screenshot there is the production, which is one panel that holds all the information with all the projects that are inside that. When you double click on one of those, it opens up this project panel, which you're probably used to seeing if you work in Premiere. And then it is doing its own set of things. And this particular project is just the dailies. So that's content coming in through ingest. There's a project just for the dailies. And then there's another project, which is the working media. And you can see it's got less things in it. So when you split across multiple projects, the different things that it is doing within the overall cycle of the production, there's less data for each project to actually have, which means it saves faster, it opens faster, and it's just mentally cleaner to go, I'm just cutting in this one. You just have the sequence in there. If you reveal in project, it will go and find the clip in the project that it lives in for you and open it. You can have them open when someone else is in there and it's locked, but you can still see what's in there. You can still use it and then put that content in your edit, even though the project lock. You just can't change what's inside their project, but you can leverage it. So understanding this one, I think, is really important to sort of rise in the kind of quality of work that you'd be doing soon. And like Paul said, just getting your head around it just for small projects as well, just becoming familiar with the way that it works. When you get those opportunities on bigger jobs, you're already way ahead of other people that don't have any experience with it. Cool. So yeah, there's different stages, doing the layups, and then you do the refined edits and all the rest of it. So you're breaking down the processes and keeping them managed through the production. Okay. All right. So Premiere Pro's got some native AI things going on in it. This is an extensive list of things that have been around for quite some time. The one thing that I think, the first one was auto reframe. So it looks at motion, it's looking for faces and hands and bodies, and it tries to do animals. It's a bit of an older tech. It's come out in 2018. So we're working on what the next gen of that might look like, but it gives you broad brushstrokes. If you start with something that is an edit that's widescreen and you need to reformat it for vertical or square or whatever, it's in there and it gives you good broad brushstrokes, and then you just go in and tweak the bits that it didn't quite get right. So the rest of them, you can go online and look them up. I will just do a couple of examples here, so a bit of demo time. Let me just bring up Premiere Pro. Okay, so this is, and I've just got that muted here. So this is just the first 5 minutes of an 18-minute documentary that my wife did, part of her PhD. It's got a lot of cuts in it. And if I was going to do a cut down of highlights for her, and she's not giving me the whole project, which that's a heavy lift, right? I don't necessarily need the whole thing. I can right click on this and use scene edit detection to find where there are hard cuts and just cut it up for me. One of the other options there is to organize each of those found ranges and make a separate instance of that as a subclip. And then you can just browse the subclips, and then you've got the building blocks. So I kind of think of, there's two ways of editing. You've got additive, where you've got a timeline and you're building on it, you're adding, and then you've got another timeline where you take its stuff away, so it's subtractive. That's how I kind of think of it. Do you think there's maybe another version of that, or is that kind of pretty much the two variations, right? So that was 5 minutes clip. How long did that take to do all the cuts? If I just jump to all the cuts, under a minute, maybe 30 seconds. I didn't talk for very long while it did it. It's very, very fast. So if I select all of these and then I go to my info page, there's 60 cuts in there that it just did for me, right? If I sat there going, oh, wait, it's there, and cut and find the next bit, I'll go back, cut. It takes forever. So that's AI getting you there faster, just preparing you. Another thing that is a huge recent addition is speech enhancement. So I've got, and we'll see if the audio comes out.
My name is Lauren.
Yep, cool, great. So I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut to just actively disable and enable the opposing audio. One track, this top track we'll hear first, is the dirty audio. It's a boom mic, it's very echoey, and then underneath it, the same stuff, but I ran enhanced speech, which is one of the plugins in Premiere, and then you hear it sounds like it's a lapel mic. So here's the difference.
NYS, I'm a muralist, have been a muralist for 10 years. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, and I was always drawing and painting.
Hear the difference?
For doodling in my math workbook, for example.
Like, it's crazy. Do you know how long that would take you to do all the audio mixing and band and bypass filters and like not quite that good. There are magicians out there, but they're highly trained audio engineers. When you've just got stuff that needs to just get out the door and you don't have that kind of part of the process of what you're working on, this is a massive time saver. Don't make it save things deliberately, like I'm just going to shoot it on my phone and whatever, I don't care. There's a limit, but I mean, that's a huge difference. So that, oh, right, yeah, sure. So let me just flip over here. So this is one of the clips that doesn't have.
I'd never seen anyone doing it.
So there's a way to right click, select the whole group, right click, and then use enhance, but it is part of the essential sound panel, and that's the enhance feature there. So you just click on it. It's already processed this once, so it doesn't need to do it again. And then you've got a wet and dry mix for it too. So you can go, oh, it sounds a little, now it's starting to sound a little robotic. It's a little weird. Depends on what kind of noise profile it's working with. And you can slide it back and forth to just still give that live room sound, but be more on mic. Yeah, it's really powerful stuff. And this is an oldie but a goodie. It's been in audition for a very long time, and it is Remix. So this music track is too long for the edit, and I can select, where are we now? It is hidden under here, the Remix tool. I just grab the end of that and say, I want it somewhere around this length, and it will go and figure it out. It's doing this analysis where it figures out the tempo, where there's music, where there's dialogue, there's sliders, so you can change it and get a lot of variations. But once it's calculated this, that's a new, starts like the original track, ends like the original track. So you get that nice ending that you get with tracks, rather than cutting it and trying to find a way to make it. It does it for you. These zigzag lines represent where the AI has decided, I will crossfade and cut those to the tempo. And changing it around when you're in the essential sound panel, remix, customize, it's as simple as sliding how many segments do we want, less segments, more segments, what's the variations. Sometimes it will change, it depends on what it's got to work with. So you can see it's like giving you this very instant remix. Once it's calculated what's there, the sliders are very responsive. This is a huge time saver, and that's AI working for you. All right, there's one more. Where are we? Oh, the auto reframe. I was going to, you know what? What have we got time-wise? We've got time. I will take this edit that is widescreen, go to sequence, auto reframe sequence, and then tell it what is the aspect ratio. There's different kinds of motion tracking you can tell it to look for and respond to. I might just use the slower motion and then hit create, and it's gone and created that aspect ratio sequence for me. And then it's running, it just finished doing the analysis there of figuring out where to put the person. So if you see here, the original footage, she's quite over to the right side of screen. And now in the vertical, she's quite centered. So this gives you great broad brush strokes to get in, and either it works or it's a small lift to get it to just be tweaked. So from here, I click on this little effects icon, it opens the effect controls, and then I go down to auto reframe. I could offset whatever movement it's tracked. So if it's not quite, the movement's right, but the positioning's off, you use the offset to just fix it. Again, huge time saver. And the last one we're going to look at here is generative extend. So we've got footage and it's just not quite long enough. You just need a few more frames in order for the tempo of it to work. You'd slow it down, but then slowing it down can make it look weird as well. And so there's this tech that allows you to do this. Now, I've used this in a way where I'm getting an alternative take because there were mistakes. So I'm going to show you in here. The left side is the original footage. And if you just watch that, so I'll play it, it's on loop. Don't watch this bit, just watch the left. you'll see the guy's goggles fly off. And whoop, they're gone. So I stopped it just before they came off his head, and then used generative extend to just give me these extra frames. And then what you're looking at on the right, where you then see the little logo pop up, for how many frames that logo's up, that's how many frames I got to generative extend and recreate the same, all that parallax of the movement that's happening, but the goggles stay on his head. Pretty amazing. So that's the kind of tech that kind of exists today, and there's a lot more stuff to come later on. So that's the end of my demo there. And this is, you can go online and find this. Basically in this video, there's some new things that have come into Premiere, and I'll just maybe point them out. The main thing that's come out is we acquired a third-party plugin group called Film Impact. And so you used to have to pay for their plugin pack. It's now included in Premiere 25.5. If you've got older versions, if you use your Adobe ID, you can download the installation and not pay for it, and then use it in slightly older versions of Premiere as well. But all this is giving you real-time heads up. What does that effect do? This is going to be the new backbone of the way that we develop at the future of effects and transitions. It's all GPU accelerated. It's the next gen. We've had our effects pack is old, and this team are going to be the team that build the next gen of it. There's so many cool things in here. The one that I like, because I'm old, is the VHS damage effect. It looks really cool, and you get all these crazy sliders, and you got this surprise me button, and it just does this insane configuration, and you just keep cycling that until you find something that you like. Really easy and fun to get into, and there's so many different things in here. There's like 90 different things that come in. So that's the main thing. So I'm going to skip that slide. Right, so Firefly, which is we have an engine for AI called Firefly, but we also have a platform called Firefly. So you can do different things within it. And I just want to highlight a couple of different things here. This is customer-led. So I've worked with customers on this type of thing where they started with an idea where they wanted to have a spoon that looked like it was cereal, and then they wanted the word sale in there, and then they wanted that to animate. So to do that without AI, you would need to come up with a storyboard. You probably need to go in and kind of create something, because, I mean, how do you make SALE out of that texture and material? Maybe you need some 3D people. Then you got a 3D person who's going to animate it, blah, 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 blah. This took me, I didn't really know what I was doing at the start. So it took me about 8 hours, and it got me 4 video prompts before I went from this to this. See how that's just got this cool little jiggle to it? So what I did here, the first frame, I created that in Firefly with a prompt, and it took me a few prompts to kind of get where I wanted to go. And I went, oh, that is so close. That's super close. So then I took that and put it into Photoshop, cleaned it up, changed the color of the some of the letters so then they stood out more, and then used that as a first frame reference, and then asked it to animate. And then I got this really cool little thing. So if you happen to see this in a particular retail store that's an Australian-owned company, that it's either mine, because I made that, or they've done a version of that themselves. So that's the kind of stuff you can do, like bringing images to life. This is now the new hot thing that all these companies are trying to get their head around now. Another couple examples here. I just very crudely added this Adobe Express logo on a flag. I kind of did a filter pass with contrast to make the texture of the it's bad. It's very bad, but I got this, which looks freaking cool. Like, how cool is that? And I made a template, so then you can just auto replace whatever's that logo with your own logo or name or graphic or whatever you like, and then you got a good start frame, and then you just ask it the same prompt, and then you get your own version of that. Pretty cool. So this is, well, this is what someone's attempt at getting AI to create a candle that is a still image, and this is a GIF, so it just keeps going around and around, where they're like, how do we make this look real? Like, it doesn't look like a video. It looks like someone just stuck on this really pretty pathetic looking flame. How do we make it look more real, right? And so I asked it to do something in a dynamic way, and then I got this. So what I got there was I got this really cool looking thing, but look at the dynamics of how light affects the environment. It affects the way that there's this refraction of light on a glass surface. All this stuff it did within minutes of just trying different prompts. And the start, it's kind of ridiculous, but I took the final few seconds and then used generative extend in Premiere, and then I had an infinite loop version of it that can be used as a promo. Question?
Can I just ask, so that first flag, that image, did you use that, did you get that from Firefly or did you get that from?
That's a great question. So the question, in case anyone online didn't hear it, the question was, where did that flag image come from? Did I generate it, or how did I go about getting that? I used Adobe stock. So that's another really awesome use case where you go to stock, you find something that works, and you go, I want to tweak it. And then there's different processes you can go through to kind of really make magic. All right, now this goes for, let's see, it goes for 4 minutes, but I'm going to fast forward a bit of it. So there's a few things in here, which this is designed for educators. So the Adobe site that educators get access to, this is part of the portal. A colleague of mine in the UK, Neil's put this together. I think it's an excellent use case of merging a few different things. And there's a couple of things in here that I haven't spoken about that he does talk about. So we'll just hit play.
Luis is working with his class of film students, showing them how to bring an interview sequence to life for use in a short-form documentary. On screen, we see a ceramics artist talking about her practice and the inspiration behind her work.
Help their creative mind, and that's same for me. So I just needed a place to put like my love of vintage, my love of inclusive vintage and fashion.
By itself, the interview is interesting, but Luis wants his students to see how they can enrich it with B-roll, subtle enhancements, and creative choices that make the film feel polished, professional, and engaging for an audience. In this first example, the artist is talking about the community classes she hosts at her pottery studio.
So Emotion Potion is, I like to say it's like where my other passions live.
We've dropped in a cutaway clip from Adobe stock, a pottery class in action. The image works well visually, but of course the stock video is silent. Luis explains that sound design is every bit as important as image selection. To help his students understand this, he plays the same clip again, this time with a gentle music bed from Adobe stock audio running underneath.
So I think that during lockdown, I definitely just like went for all the clay work, but I feel like...
And then demonstrates how to generate atmospheric sound using Firefly. Firefly creates a believable layer of audio that instantly transforms the stock footage. Suddenly, the establishing shot feels as though it was recorded on location.
So Emotion Potion is, I like to say it's like where my other passions live. So I think that...
Moving on, the artist describes the manual dexterity and muscle strength required to become a master potter. Luis selects a great close-up cutaway of hand shaping clay on a wheel from Adobe stock. The shot is expressive, but the clip is short, only 6 seconds long. If he cuts it directly into the edit, it ends too abruptly and the rhythm of the piece suffers. Here, Luis demonstrates Firefly's generative extend capabilities inside Premiere Pro. With just a few clicks, the clip is lengthened by a couple of seconds with entirely new frames generated to fill the gap. The extension is seamless. The motion of the hand is continuous, the clay spins naturally, and the shot now resolves cleanly with the hand lifting gracefully away from the pot and out of the shot.
Pretty amazing kind of use where it's like, wow, I see all this coming together and being able to tell stories with some pretty simple tools that starts to make this stuff start making a lot more sense. So the next bit he was going to go into is that in Premiere now, we have got the ability to take captions that we, from the transcription, convert it to captions, and then do a translation of captions. So you can have another language on top. And then another thing that he goes into is We also have an engine that can reword and make someone speak another language.
Luis explains that he might ask students to build an animation in After Effects, but that requires technical skill and time that not every film student may yet have. Instead, he demonstrates Firefly's text-to-video generation. By crafting a detailed prompt, he produces a photorealistic ceramic pot lit under studio conditions, with a painted tulip on its surface. As the clip runs, the tulip morphs naturally into a daffodil, echoing the exact words the artist is speaking in the interview. Luis pauses to highlight how powerful this can be in documentary storytelling. Students see that with careful prompting, they can quickly and easily expand their creative palette. Finally, Luis highlights the importance of reaching international audiences. For students aiming at festivals, global sharing, or simply posting online, translation lowers barriers and increases accessibility, showing how their project can connect with viewers beyond their own community. He shows the class how, after transcribing dialogue and creating captions in the original language, Premiere Pro can instantly translate the captions into Spanish. But he doesn't stop there. He uses Firefly voice translation with matching lip sync, and the artist's voice is convincingly dubbed so that she appears to be speaking Spanish natively and fluently.
Por lo general, soy yo quien hace piezas, porque comienzas con algunas piezas de calentamiento que serán lo que hagas todo el tiempo.
The result is not just subtitles, but a fully localized clip.
So yeah, there's a whole new world. There's a whole new world of being able to, especially for B-roll, and then finding ways to just effectively bring together all the elements that make great storytelling for video. So let's get out of there, and Adobe Express for video. So there's one really cool feature inside of Express that I want to make sure everyone's aware of. If you've got longer content that you need to do highlight reels for, experiment a bit with this thing. You can throw 1 gig is the max file size, but 2 hours in length, you can throw into this platform, and it will auto edit a series of highlights based on themes that the AI detects. And you just give it the aspect ratio you want it to do it. And then it comes back with, in this case, I think this was I can't remember how long this video was, like 5 minutes. And it came back with 6 40 to 20 second highlights that it just auto cut for me. You can add the captions on top, you can change the color of the captions, and if you wanted to, you could refine the edit inside of the Express timeline view as well, and then export it out and all the rest of it. So there's this really big shift and change towards getting stuff out the door quicker, and this will get you broad brushstrokes much closer to where you want to be, using AI to help you get there. It's not going to take away ideas. You still need humans to get the ideas and validate. Is that any good? Or is it worth using? Or some of it is, but now I've got to take that and then I keep massaging it until it's just right and what I want. All right, so we have reached the end of our official presentation, and now we're at the door prize stage. So I'm going to use my phone to walk through this process. Okay, right, so that QR code, this is going to be fun. God, this is fun. This is so much fun. All right, so I'm going to QR code that. Ding. Right, we'll see what this all looks like. Now, we tested this extensively earlier today, so I'm hoping this is smooth and seamless. And again, these are the prizes, all right? There's your mat, and there's your mug. Woohoo! Everyone's excited. I'm excited. You're excited. We're all excited. Come on now. It might take a little bit. All right, cool. Now, it's opened up this template, and there's a set of instructions that come with it. So if I scroll down, the instructions are there in the notes. Replace the background photo with you, so do a selfie. And then update the name tag with your name. So those of us who are here in person, we've all got name tags. For those of you online, you don't have one, but in this, you do. And then there's another section with the hashtag, and it's just got replace me here as the hashtag in there, and we'll replace it with screen industry point of view, or POV, right? Screen industry POV. Okay, so I'll go and use the template. And on the right side, if I scroll, there's all the different layers that make up this. And you can see there's padlocks on certain design elements so they don't get changed. What I'm going to do though is this, I'm just not going to wait for that. I'm just going to swipe that down and get into the timeline so we can see there's like a few different things going on in here. It's a little bit complicated, but very, very cool. If I swipe all the way to the right, there's this quick replace button. And then I've got text stuff that I can replace or media stuff that I can replace. I'm going to go to the text one and select the replace me here, which it's highlighted for me. And I'll type in now the hashtag. There it is. I've got it on screen. Screen industry POV. Right, okay. Let's see how bad my spelling is. Screen industry POV. Oops. Righto. That's that bit. It's been replaced. Okay, so I've got something else that I need to replace. And you can see now, because I've got that selected, there's this stack of what is selected kind of in the timeline there. So now I'm going to select the top layer, which is the name bit, and then go to the replace button there and then select that, and I'll put my name in, John, JB. Everybody calls me JB. Make it JB. Awesome. And then if I scroll all the way to the very bottom, there's the replace image. And again, I'll go all the way to the right and then hit replace me and do a photo. And I want everyone to just squeeze in a little. All right, let's see if we can get, how many people can we get? Now, there's a bit at the bottom there, so I've got to make sure I don't cut my own head off despite my face. Good grief. There you go. All right, there we go. That's about as good as it's going to get. Righto. Arms up. Whee! Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for participating. All right, hit OK. Now, this is important. I want to add it as a layer because we consider in Express a scene is a new shot. I don't want a new shot. I want to replace the layer. So add as layer. Bang, look at that. What a sexy group that is. Cool. Okay. And then I'm going to download that from the very top right. There's a little download button. And all the recommended options are there. That's fine. Download it. I'll download this and then I'll post it through my social media. Thank you to our panelists. And thank you to you who showed up. It does make a difference. And the fact that you showed up here is the first step of many networking kind of opportunities where just showing up is half of the game, right? So well done for showing up. And those online as well.
Yes.
Many of you are interstate or just unable to make it, but the fact that you are putting in the effort, it pays dividends. So keep going. And for those of you who know people that were supposed to come today and don't have a good excuse, let them know that come next time. Let's go do more stuff in the real world and online as well, but in the real world. And we're going to stop here and then we're going to have a bit of networking with everybody afterwards. So thank you again.